Okay, so it looks like maybe I got kicked off the, I don't know, my connection dropped. Anyway, the app closed, and so it says something about the app forced closing. So anyway, so I was saying the before. The second thing is the during. And like I said about that, having that moment of positivity, like a drama-free Christmas. And that's important to know that, hey, there's weird things that may happen on Christmas. As I like to say, the aardvarks come out. Aardvarks are kind of funny looking animals, right? They're kind of funny. And like just funny, weird, bizarre things might happen. And this is because at Christmas time, it's for somebody who maybe misses their family or who's lost a loved one. Christmas can be a lonely moment, a sad moment. And sometimes folks take it out in strange ways. I had a very wise psychiatrist actually tell me this once. She was saying something about there's a syndrome in psychiatry. They call it like syndrome of mom in New York, syndrome of daughter in California. And it's when families are split up and when somebody is resentful that their mom or their daughter can't be with them at a certain time, then they start to take it out. They start to lash out at other people. And so I think that happens a lot at Christmas. And so just to be aware, but just to know, okay, that's why this person is responding this way. They're lonely, they're sad, they're missing somebody, and they're stressed out. They're going to have, 48 people for Christmas Eve dinner, and there's only one of them to cook, and so they're stressed out about this. So that can happen too. So to be aware, so the during, just to be aware and be present. And then the after, I think the other piece of it is, actually back up for a second. The during. I was saying the during of, knowing that there might be some strange things that happen, that people might express themselves in an unusual way, but also to be aware of other things that happen. Just being alert, just knowing what's going on in your community and taking notes. I'm thinking about putting a journal together, a church planning journal, and making that available, like a workbook, like a church planning workbook, because that was one thing that we used to always talk about at my old ministry. We used to talk about having a calendar and taking notes and reviewing our notes from the year previous. And I think that would, like, having a journal with very specific, detailed questions for each point in the church year would have been really helpful. So I am going to look into a few things, and I think I might put something together, even just so, right now, just a downloadable worksheet. And if I do, when I go back and edit, I'll put a link in the description box. So that's a thought. So the possibility so take notes, bring a notebook. This is really weird. Maybe it's not that weird. The phone that I have, I won't get an iPhone. I'd love to get an iPhone, but I won't. And there's one reason. I've always had a phone with a stylus because I can take notes during church, and it's notes. It doesn't look like I'm texting somebody in the middle of mass or in the middle of a service. So I've always gotten a phone with a stylus so that I can take my notes. And so there would be times where I would be working and I would go into the church and it would be in the middle of a service to check on something, and then I notice, okay, that light bulb is out, or I need to chat with that musician about something, or that lector is mumbling. Maybe they need to be coached. So there would be little things that are just like kind of take little notes. But if you don't want to do that and you want to bring a little notebook with you, you could do that, or a clipboard, just to kind of evaluate, or you can take the notes on your phone. But just kind of be aware and evaluate the before, the during. So the during is being aware, like, it's going to be drama free. I'm going to be chill. I'm going to respond to things afterwards. But also make note of things that happen. For example, you might see that you didn't have enough people in the parking lot to greet people when they're parking, for example. And you could say, okay, next year we need 6 people in the parking lot instead of 4. You just take little notes. Or to say, okay, we need one more verse of the first hymn, because the presiding minister, the priest, is going to bless the nativity, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe, okay, this year we had 300 people at the 4 o'clock service, but we only had 70 at the 8 o'clock. Just taking little notes like that. And head counts are so important. Head counts are so important. Head counts are super, super important. Head counts. I can't say enough about head counts. And having a record of them over the course of years so that you get an idea of what the trends are. Is this 4 o'clock mass growing? Is this 4 o'clock mass shrinking? Is this 5 o'clock service doing better, worse? Knowing what day of the week Christmas Eve fell on last year versus the year before. Now it's easy. We can just go into our phones and look it up. Years ago, that used to be different. But knowing that is also helpful. Last year, Christmas Eve fell on a Sunday, and that was the first time in 11 years that had happened. And so one of the stats that I was looking for was what was Christmas Eve attendance like the last time it fell on a Sunday, and nobody had that data. But keeping track of data like that is very helpful during the jury. You might want to delegate a few people in your community just to be head count people. You might want to delegate a few people just to kind of do that. And then the after. Having a meeting during early January, even a conference call if you get bad weather in January, having a conference call, rather than looking at the negative and saying, this is what we got wrong, ask, what are some successful things? For us at my church, Christmas Eve, we pack out the church. Ryan says, yes. I think every church gets packed on Christmas Eve. Or depending on the tradition, it could be Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but every church gets packed more than Sunday. And we want to see people keep coming back. But we used to get maybe like 700 on the weekends, and then that number doubled at Christmas. We would have somewhere tripled. 700 to 1,000 on the weekends, and then we would have about 2,500 at Christmas between all of the masses. That was about the number. It went up last year. I want to say it was like 2,496 for the message of the birth of Christ. Yeah, people want to come out for Christmas. It's a tradition. There's something about it that for folks, they may not go to church every week, but they show up at Christmas. There's also other things too that factor. If it's a parish with young families, it's easier for the grandparents to come visit the young family and go to church together than it is to travel with 3 kids to go see grandma and grandpa. So the grandparents may come to visit, so especially if it's a parent community with young, but other Sundays we don't have that many in church. Yeah, that's true. I've experienced the same thing. But Christmas is a time to evangelize. Even if we see that number go up, even if it's 1 or 2 families, and both 9:30, even if it's 1 or 2 families that say, hey, I really liked how I felt after coming to church this year, and I'm going to try to go more often. Even if it's 1 or 2 families, we want people to keep coming back. The after part of evaluating is as important as the planning and the note-taking or the observation and the spirit. So the after part, I would say this, as I was saying earlier. Instead of asking what went wrong, I wouldn't use that word in a meeting. I would with staff. I would not use that word with volunteers. I would just say, hey, what are some things that worked really well? And what are some things that you would like to try next year? Why do I say that? This stamps out all of the complaining. This stamps out, and I find that complaining is draining. That was one of the things that this is why it gets to a point where it's like, I know that this is beyond my control, but it still gets draining. So rather than asking what didn't work out, rather than asking what didn't work out, ask, what could we try? This way, anybody who wants to just vent or attack anybody can't, because they have to come up with a solution before presenting their grievance. This is a positive. I've done this in meetings with musicians, and this creates a much more positive sentiment in the room. It also makes it very easy to spot when there's an agenda and to kind of weed that out, if that makes sense. So what I would say is, hey folks, so how did Christmas go? What did you think worked really, really well? What in your opinion was a success? And then ask, okay, so what are a couple of things that you'd like to try next year? And you can even give people these questions in advance. That way, they have time to think about it. And yeah, if there's somebody who's got a gripe because they didn't like, maybe they didn't like there was a pageant before Mass, or maybe they didn't like the fact that the service was at 4:00 instead of 6:00. They could say, instead of saying, I didn't like that the service was at 4:00, they could say, well, maybe next year we could try it at 5:30 instead, or 5:00. That way they have an opportunity to think of a solution before they just come out and start venting. Because as leaders, that venting can just get draining. And so, yeah, so the three things that churches miss at Christmas that could be done better, I think, would be better planning, more astute observations during, and then also a better sense of a debrief or an evaluation meeting after. And when those three things are in place, then it becomes much easier to have really good music, because everybody's got their ducks in a row months ahead of time. They've been practicing. They know what's going on. One of the most frustrating things for me in ministry was when I didn't know what my boss, my supervisor, wanted. And so it was difficult for me to plan music for the other musicians. Or there was one year where we didn't have a schedule of Christmas masses until November. That was frustrating too, because how can I schedule musicians and how can the musicians be prepared if they don't know? And then, if we wait till the last minute, then we're left with folks that may not be so confident in what they can do. They may not know what they're doing. So planning ahead of time is crucial. And I think that is the one thing, if there's one thing that any church could do to fix those 3 Christmas mistakes, it is planning. Planning. That's why in that video I was like, Christmas starts now, because Christmas does start now. Yes, we have this glorious season of Advent. If your Christian tradition, celebrates the season of Advent, that celebration of preparation before the birth of Christ, if you celebrate that, yes, obviously we have Advent. But planning is crucial. Christmas is that one time of year where we see everybody. And if you think about it, if you're not willing to invest in we say this, somebody I'm 35, I am not married. I don't think that I'm called to that in my life. But for a while I thought maybe that I was. And so I did a lot of homework about dating. And in dating, they say, you have to invest in you. If you want somebody else to invest in you, you have to invest in yourself. How can anybody else love you if you don't love yourself? Like all these little things, about investing in yourself first. And I'm going to say this. It's the same with church. How is anybody else going to invest in what you have to offer if you're not first showing them that you think it's important? If your community is taking the time and the effort to invest, to love them, to love the presence of Christ in their community, to show that love, others are going to want to do that too. Others are going to see, wow, this is something special. There is something here. I want to be a part of this, not just at Christmas. This is worth my time coming back week after week after week. So investing that time in advance is the one thing that you can do to keep them coming back. I can't promise you that you're going to see Christmas numbers every week. But But if you put the time into your Christmas celebration, you may see 1 or 2 or 5 people say, hey, I want to be more involved in this community, because you've done the work, because they see through your actions and your effort that you believe in what's there. You believe that Christ is present in your worshiping assembly. You believe. And they're going to see, and they're going to want to be a part of that. In some cases, it might not even be 1 or 2 or 5 families that come back. You might find one person who loves Christmas, who is your gold star Christmas volunteer. And you might see that because they got involved in a Christmas celebration, being part of the decorating committee, being part of the parking lot crew, being part of the choir just at Christmas, you might see that, okay, they're going to be more engaged for the rest of the year. And because they're more engaged and because they're more committed, their leadership, they might invite their friends, or they might invite their neighbor to come and join your community. And through their involvement in Christmas, they're growing your assembly week after week. It's subtle, but Christmas is a great opportunity. And as I said in that video, Christmas starts now. Christmas starts now. And so, like I said, the 3 things that we kind of miss at Christmas are the before, the during, and the after. Planning and preparation, the during, the being present in that moment, and also knowing that, okay, this is Christmas, this is why this is happening, but also making notes of the things that, wow, okay, that was cool. That worked really well, that didn't. And then being able to take those notes to a debriefing meeting. Take all of the stuff, everybody gets all of these funky candies and goodies, these baskets from Harry and David and Swiss Colony. Oh, I used to love the Petit Fours. Oh, I love those. All funky things from Swiss Colony and Harry and David and home baked goods. And then after New Year's, everybody makes these New Year's resolutions. I'm going to diet. I'm going to eat healthy. So bring all of your leftover holiday candies and goodies. Bring all of your Christmas goodies to this meeting. Have a Christmas potluck, or like at the end of, you could even do it at the end of December, but then have your evaluation meeting, getting all of your goodies out of the house before you make your New Year's resolutions, to sit down and discuss and say, okay, this is what worked really, really well. High five, and let's celebrate this. But then next year, let's try this. And being as positive as you can. And the one thing that you can do to make sure that this all happens is to start meeting and talking about it and planning. And if you can, the earlier you can, the better. June is ideal. Actually, by starting after Christmas and having that evaluation meeting, you are having your first planning meeting for the next year, because you're already looking at what you've done good and good, what you've done well, good, what you've done well, your good things. Then to start with your planning meeting, to have your committee early. June is ideal. September is great. October is fine. It's not too late now. You can do it now. Have a Saturday morning meeting and offer breakfast. Do it before Thanksgiving. Do it before Thanksgiving. I would say Veterans Day is probably the latest that you want to do this. But if you have to, just make sure that it's before Thanksgiving. That Saturday before Thanksgiving is often the weekend when people go grocery shopping if they're hosting. So maybe you want to avoid that Saturday before Thanksgiving. Maybe Saturday, 2 Saturdays before is good. But shoot for like before Veterans Day, or Veterans Day at the latest. Veterans Day is actually might be a good landmark, because that's a day when folks have off sometimes, and so you could have a breakfast meeting and say, hey, we're going to go have breakfast and talk about our plans for Christmas, and then hold one another accountable and meet at regular intervals. You might want to do every week, you might want to do every month, you might want to do, didn't catch what you were saying earlier. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Ryan, if you want to give me a place where I left off, that would be great. and then I can get back to it. But yeah, the three things that churches are missing are the before, the during, and the after. And the one thing that we can do to fix that is to communicate, is to prepare to meeting. Okay, Veterans Day. Yeah, to get started, Veterans Day at the latest would be the latest point where you would want to have a Christmas planning meeting. It's never too late. If there's somebody is watching this video and it's like the week before Christmas, by all means, and you want to do something, get everybody together for a meeting. It really is never too late to communicate, but ideally, like the latest that you would want to do this is November, like mid-November, Veterans Day, I would say. Because by that point, then folks have an idea, then there's like a good 6 weeks to get ready. But if possible, earlier than that, start in June and say, okay, we're just getting together. We just want to, rough outline and then go from there. Rough outline. Okay, who are we going to order? What's our budget? What's our budget for flowers? Are we going to have this in the upper church, lower church, whatever the case may be? Are we going to have this celebration? Do we have too many people? Do we have to go to an offsite facility? Do we have to get a tent? I was always pushing for that at my old job. I was like, why don't we just get like one of those fancy tents and heat and go to the park if we can't fit all the people into the church? Because that was the other problem, is like we didn't have enough. At one mass we were filled to like 250% of capacity. So luckily, like the towns really didn't enforce capacity rules, but I was always pushing like, there's going to come a year where we can't do that. But for you, Veterans Day for you. It's okay for you. Okay. So yeah. So those are the things. I hope that helped. For us, we start planning. Ryan says, for us, we start planning. Can't see it. Let's see. Can't see. Okay. I love it when you guys comment. I love that. Christmas Eve service is around August. Yes! You guys know what you're doing. Yes, exactly. Yes. And it's good to know these things because it also sets a signal to the community. Your phone is having issues. Yeah, mine was having issues. Mine was having a little issues too because I got cut off earlier. Yes, start planning. Yes, that's great. You guys are, that's awesome. Start, and maybe to step that up, if planning sometimes gets overwhelming or a lot, you can cut your meetings. You could say that you're going to have keep the meeting strictly to an hour, and you could hold one another accountable to meet, on regular intervals every 2 weeks. Sometimes that breaks things down. If you are I'm drawing a blank. If sometimes the meetings can get overwhelming when they come together and it's like one big chunk, it's like a 2-hour long meeting, well, maybe hold one another accountable to say, okay, we're going to have 45-minute to an hour meetings. We're meeting every 2 weeks, but we're going to have very, tight agendas, and then we're going to have coffee afterwards. Something like that. To keep measurable, we're going to have a tight agenda with questions. The more you plan anything, the more it's going to show that you believe in this. You believe in the birth of Christ. You believe in Christ. You believe that Christ was born. You believe in this. The more that you show something is special, the more others are going to see the specialness in it. And in my experience, the best way we can do that is by putting our energy and intention into it. This is not to say that this exhausts our energy and intention and that we shouldn't have, a level of energy and intention that goes into every celebration, that goes into every church moment. But this is particularly special. This is high stakes because this is a time when folks who don't usually come to church. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. We've been on about 35-40 minutes. So I am going to wrap up as I have to upload another video. But I want to thank you so much for watching. Let me see if I can see who is watching. I know Ryan, you're watching. I know Thomas Hobson Williams, you were watching. And it's kind of a no-brainer. I know, and it's kind of like the before, during, and after. And the most important thing is to plan. And our Christmas concerts around September. Yeah. If there's one other piece of insight I could give, I would say this. I don't know how it is in other Christian denominations if you celebrate the Epiphany. As Catholics, we do. I know the Episcopalians do. There's some other Christian denominations that do. If you can, also remember that Christmas extends, if you have a season of Christmas, so that, after Christmas, you're still celebrating the birth of Christ for 12 days or so. Southern Baptists don't. Okay. For those of you that do, though, also keep in mind that you can celebrate the season of Christ's birth after Christmas. Sometimes it gets overwhelming. No, that's cool. No, it's not. I'm not a fan at all. For those of you that do, you can keep in mind, you can do that. For those of you that don't, another tip, another thought, so that folks don't get worn out or burned out before Christmas, is that whatever you do for Christmas one year, if you're going to do new Christmas music, that's for the Christmas, if it's going to be new Christmas music, that's for the Christmas celebration, for your Christmas services. But then if you're going to do a Christmas concert before Christmas, maybe take music that's familiar stuff for the concert. Maybe take stuff that was done at the Christmas service last year, stuff that's familiar to the choir, and do that before Christmas, so that they're singing stuff that they're familiar with at the concert, and that there's less of a demand, less of a strain on the people in music ministry at the Christmas services. Because also remember, like, folks who are in ministry, they have that's what we do every Christmas concert as far as music goes, with both choir and orchestra. Wow, even orchestra, that's really cool. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. But yeah, keeping stuff, go easy on yourself at Christmas, and remember self-care as well, to care for yourself. Yep. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. All right, so I am going to go. I want to thank you for watching, and I am going to upload another video about self-love. I need to come down to your church. Yeah, I do need to come down to your church. I do. I am going to, what am I going to do? I have to upload a video, and then I have to go to Acme and get myself a Larabar, because I love Larabars. Yay! I have to go get myself a Larabar, and then I'm going to have a first answer. Yes, I do. That's really cool. All right, so I am going to go. Thank you for watching, guys and gals, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much, and I bid you peace.